All right, good evening. We're going to do we're starting our finance committee meeting. The sole purpose of this meeting is to talk about the financial recovery plan, specifically the budget aspect of it that we hope to have before council very soon. And our administration has been hard at work. And so we have Jason Probbins, John Moore, myself, Emily Franzen will be here in just a minute from council, Tim Wagers, and James Bonsall are here from the tax office, the treasurer's office. Mr. Bonsall has an arrangement he needs to meet, so he'll be leaving soon. Mr. Noah Powers from the Safe Service Director, Clint Zimmerman, our new 90% full-time budget director, still running the water mains, and then Mr. Miracle, Mr. Miracle, the auditor, is here. Okay, gentlemen, so I would love to keep this to an hour, and I want to run through kind of the snapshot of what I've been able to discern from the FRP, the budget side of this. So let's see, 5 sections of slides we're going to look at: the 2023 to 2026 context, an overview of just last year to this year, new capital projects, the new reoccurring expenditures from 2025 to 2026, and then the last few slides are the projections for the next 5 years. I will try to speed through these, and then I've been digesting these for a while, and I've asked Mr. Zimmerman multiple questions, so I've gotten a lot of my answers, but I will pause for any clarifications or questions from the committee. Okay, so going back to our budget hearing from the end of last year, I started with this document. This is the tax budget that we adopted in July, and this says what our revenue, our income looks like, and so this is kind of the starting point of the whole process. If we look at the historical overview, you can see that our revenue has climbed a little bit from 2023 to this year. Our expenditures have climbed as well, and then this is the bottom line is what our cash is left in the bank at the end of the year. I'm going to move on because this is a tricky thing to understand this year from what I've learned. So if we go back for just a second, it looks like our revenue and our expenditures have drastically jumped from last year to this year. But there is a caveat to that makes sense, I think, if you live all of your days in a spreadsheet. It does not make sense if you're trying to forecast a city, from what I can see. So if you look at this line on page 3 of the PDF document, there's a $4.5 million increase in our revenue. And this is demanded that we account for it this way in the books. But this is all this is all grant money. And so you can see on the bottom breakdown here, this is money that we have been given through grants. And so it looks like this is it is in our general fund, but it shouldn't be in our general fund on the books in essence. Does that make sense?
It's basically if I may, I don't know what the
yes, sir.
So basically the way the auditor of state put it to us was we had been using a specific process for a reduction of expenses on some stuff, and it was made aware to us by the auditor of state that they didn't like that. They wanted to see it built in as revenue. The income comes as revenue, so it's just basically a net increase or a net wash. Basically, you get an increase in revenue with an increase in expenditures. And that's a way, because otherwise, I guess from the audit side of things, it would have looked like we were spending the same pool of money over and over and over again without really capturing the amount that was being expended for capital projects.
Thank you. That was a much more accurate way of saying it. So again, you can see the 5 different breakdowns. There's money that's earmarked for projects, and then the last time we met as a finance committee, we talked about the cannabis tax revenue. And so that is money that is in our general fund right now that we need to make a decision on how to store that or account for that coming up in the future.
So
Mr. Probbins.
Is this a new way for us to report grant funding, or is this new revenue coming into the city?
I wouldn't say it would be one-time revenue. It's not something that we counted on year over year.
Okay, so it's new revenue coming into the city. We're just not reporting our grant funding differently this year as compared to the past.
Well, this is going to be a sea change from how we have been doing it in the past, yes.
Okay, so a little bit of both, it sounds like. Excellent.
And this is at at the behest of the Auditor of State. Anna Mary brought it to our attention that this is the way she would like to see it. I think it'll make it a lot clearer for them when they do the gap reporting at the end of the year. It'll make it a lot more sense for them on their end when they're doing the audit. And I would like to say, since the adult use tax was brought up, that's what I put the line time, labeled it as adult use tax. I only provided for this year. So those numbers for the adult use tax are not baked into 27 through 30 because I had no historical data really to go off of. And to be quite frank with you, I'm not really sure that the state's going to let us keep taking that money in. I just got a sneaking suspicion they're going to step in and want to take it.
So is it accurate to say then too that because these monies are maybe pinned to a calendar year and whatnot, that it's next to impossible to expect what 2027 might be? So sort of this time next year, we'll again have to sort of inflate up that intergovernmental number once we have a clearer picture of what 27 will look like.
Well, specifically for the capital expenditure project, we have projects that you see why this is inflated are for specific projects that have already started. We know they're going to finish in 26. Mm-hmm. And so that amount of money will definitely be off of the books this year. If we get new grant money, then that's a whole other deal, then we will have to add that going forward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so it's definitely going to make things look weird as the trajectory goes on. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Just one other thing on the cannabis. We'll start getting the cannabis tax revenue monthly shortly. So we should probably be getting the next monthly payment. I think I'm almost certain it's monthly, basically. But we'll give you an update as we go to about where that is. The question will just be: is it going to be in the general fund, or are you going to use those projections for another fund? But but just let you know, you'll have it monthly.
Thank you. Okay, so then I've added this new column over here on the far right where I've deducted from our revenue and from our expenditures this $4.4 million. That is that intergovernmental money, just so we can kind of have a apples to apples look. It's still there, but this helps us kind of understand historically where we are. All right, so just as a quick overview, our revenue is flat from last year to this year. It's relatively flat. We are expending a lot more than we did last year. And then we are dropping our cash about $6 million from last year to this year. So that's kind of the quick highlights that I wanted to point out. All right, I want to move on to capital projects, but are there any questions about the overview?
Jeff, is it fair to say, when you say dropping the cash, I guess just to be clear, this is that there has been essentially a cash buildup, and the idea is to put those dollars to use in the name of bettering the city through capital projects.
You're much more eloquent than I am. But that
I just wanted to be clear.
That is a really good way to say it. I'll show you later on in one of the slides to highlight this specifically. But we have been, in my opinion, we have been catching up on a lot of capital projects, a lot of salary issues, and that has been taking our unencumbered cash because we've been spending more than we've been taking in as a way of catching up. But you'll see here a little bit later, we've had, you can look at in 2025, we've had $14 million. In my opinion, we either need to spend that money or we need to cut taxes. The taxpayers need to show that, or be shown that we're using that money wisely. So I hope to show you what we're doing with that here. But thank you for communicating that much better. All right. So capital projects. I'm going out of order from the FRP PDF document. I'm sorry about that. But I want to focus on the big capital expenditures that we're looking for this coming year. It accounts for $11.3 million of new money, new projects. But after you take out that intergovernmental line, we as the city are spending $6.9 million this year that are new capital projects. On the right side of the bottom, the $2 million, that comes out of our street fund. That is an entirely separate fund. And so that is not part of the general fund, but that is what is slated to be spent in 2026. You can see on the left side, I kind of highlighted, this is just the capital fund keys for each of these departments. I think I left a few out that had some smaller amounts, but these were the big projects. You can see on the left table, street section, public lands and buildings, and parks and playgrounds have asterisks. That's where the intergovernmental money is shown, and I'll show you that slide a little bit more broken down here. Any questions? Oh, here in the next couple of slides, I also have kind of a highlight of which capital projects are being done. Any questions about this overview so far? Okay, so this is the showing where the intergovernmental fund is coming from the Elm Street Avenue project, the Montgomery Road pedestrian improvements, Doral Field. If you deduct the yellow column from the green column, basically you get what's on the far right. There's also some unencumbered money from previous years that calculate that. So what's in the budget this year that's not coming from grants are the dollar signs on the right. So that is what Norwood is investing in the Elm Avenue project, in Montgomery Road, and in all parks and playground, not in Doral Field. All right, so I want to highlight these are the big, not all of the capital expenses, but the capital projects that are happening for the police and fire. We're doing cruisers. Both our police and fire are getting a brand new radio system. There's money in there for EMS equipment, a fire truck, and a ladder truck. So those are obviously significant expenses in our projects. And then here's a lot of information taken at once, but this is, yes, sir.
How many cruisers does that cover?
Pardon?
Do you know how many cruisers that covers?
Three.
Three?
And that is on a lease basis.
Okay, thank you. You're welcome.
All right, and so here are some other big expenses in the capital improvements highlight. Again, not all of them, just highlights. The streets improvements is $750,000. There's some money towards the Elm Storm project. We have money for building repairs. Some big highlights in there are Lower Millcrest parking lot. We're hoping to get that repaved. If you've been down there, it is one of our worst pavements in the city. There's money in there for boiler replacement and an elevator, which is a huge expense in the rec center. That is something that needs to be done to be ADA compliant, and it's just an investment that we need to make. Any questions about capital improvement planning?
Would you mind going back one to the fire? Thank you. I know at some point recently there were some discussions about ladder trucks and whatnot. This 415 number seems to be reflective of let's say what was the plan a couple months ago before this new possibility was on our radar. Are we locking ourselves into this versus the potential cost savings option?
So it's my understanding we are budgeting for this year. This is like debt payment for this year and for next year. But anybody else can speak to that more accurately, I'm sure.
So the debt payment, whether we went with a new ladder truck or the used ladder truck, the debt payment is essentially the same.
Okay.
It's the number of years.
Just less years.
Will be reduced. So the FRP as it's constituted shows for the purchasing a new ladder truck. If we end up being able to do the used ladder truck, which will be something that will be brought to council on Tuesday
Okay.
To take a look at, then we will just need to take some of those later payments off of
Got it.
that forecast.
Okay. So yeah. So as it's in there now, it's 5 years. Maybe it's this other scenario. It's 3 years or 2.5.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you look at the capital planning worksheet and you look at the several years forecast, you will see there are monies in year 3, 4, and 5 that will not need to be spent if we were able to get the ladder or the used truck.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about capital improvements? Okay, so I want to focus then on reoccurring expenditures, and I think this is just one slide. I've put a lot in here. So this is just looking at the personal and contractual keys for each of these departments. So this is new money that was not in the budget last year. This is new money that's being spent this year, or projected to be spent this year compared to last year. So you can see a lot of departments are getting, of course, some kind of a bump, but then there's reasons for investments in other areas, as well as new police and new fire contracts that have taken up, a significant amount of the money percentage-wise. It's a lot of information deal, so I'll pause here for questions.
Personnel?
Did I get that right? Is it personnel in the, oh, okay, it's supposed to be personnel.
Personnel.
Thank you.
And so our health administration is paying us? Is that what I'm reading?
They are getting less money than they were getting last year.
Copy.
No,
Yeah, for some
personal
reason-
services in here.
Yeah, it's,
It should be personnel. That's what I understand. Yeah. All right. Any questions about this before I move on? Okay. So then if we look forward, this is the kind of the end here, but I'm sure there's a lot more questions to be had in this last section. So this is the 5-year projections of revenue expenditure and our unencumbered balance according to the document here. So you can see that, if you look at the 2026 numbers, those are the adjusted numbers without the intergovernmental grant revenue. So what I want to highlight is there's a drastic difference between what we're spending this year and projected to spend next year. And I think you can see most of that is calculated by spending less in capital expenses over the next 5 years. So again, to Mr. Moore's point earlier on, whenever I talked about how much cash we're spending, this is where we're spending. We have been spending a lot in capital improvements over the last few years to get caught up in deferred maintenance and just issues that we have not been able to handle. And so with our revenue staying flat, we're not really increasing our expenditures. We're actually decreasing our expenditure over the next few years. And I think the goal is to have a $2 million balance at the end of these 5 years. So we're right at that. Let's see if I think I just have one more slide. So the street fund is a different entirely fund, but I just wanted to show that we are basically investing $2 million this year, but then $1 million over the next 4 years, and that's going to keep our street fund just above $250,000. So that's really the overview. Drinking from a fire hose. Gentlemen in this room have been doing this a lot longer than I have. And specifically to Mr. Providence and Mr. Moore, what questions do you have? And then to the gentleman in the room, what have I not brought up that should have been discussed already?
Yeah, Jeff, I think just if you go back one, hopefully, it's fairly inconsequential, but I do think there might need to be some updates on the 29 and 30, just in a minor sort of formula issue that I caught and discussed with Mr. Zimmerman.
Okay.
So just worth noting. I guess I know, Mr. Bonsall, you've had some different comments in the past about sort of that sweet spot, cash on hand kind of number. I would just ask if you have any commentary on that as it pertains to, from what this year is maybe 15 million or so beginning cash balance, and in the next 5 years that'll be like a $2 million buffer. Do you believe that's like an appropriate amount to sort of be down to that percentage relative to the overall operating budget?
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity. I think that's an excellent observation. I think there are some structural things in this plan that we have to kind of put in there that we don't always spend. So even though we're projecting a $2 million balance at the end, like each one of these years is going to have expenses. In last year, if it weren't for the earnings tax refunds, last year probably would have had $1 million carryover balance that we didn't spend from appropriations that we had. So long story short, I think that this, in general, the city, I think $2 million was appropriate when our general fund budget was 20 million or 18 million, 10 years ago. It's probably too low to aim for now. I think it's fine in the plan though, because again, there are structural things in the plan that we have to bank for contingencies just in case, that I think will make this all right. I feel comfortable. Every year we're projecting if we get to $8 billion by the end of this year, I will be shocked, just because of the time that it takes to do all of these projects. And there's always something that we don't get to. We don't know what that is right now, but long story short is yes, I think that we should look at that in general, but I think that the structure of this plan, I think it's probably fine, and it'll probably still put the city in a good position.
would it be fair? I think what I'm hearing you say is that there is like slack in the line, or there are, due to turnover, due to any number of things, we probably won't necessarily spend these things in practice, even though we do have to kind of safeguard in reality. So that's kind of where that like natural buffer is built in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, I mean, just earnings tax refunds, for example, we don't spend the full amount. We have to budget for it for appropriations, but we don't always spend the full amount. The last year we did, but that was the first time since I've been treasurer and since I was on finance committee that we've spent that much. And there, outside legal fees is another example. Like, we budget for that, but a lot of times, like Mr. Powers and the administration, they don't always use all of that. So, and there's I could there's probably 10 other examples of the budget that we have to kind of plan for, and it might be a 50-50 chance of whether we have to use it. So yeah, you're exactly right.
And if I may, there's a fair amount of pricing in worst case scenarios for things here, so that it gives us some flexibility. But if you look at just the stuff that I've looked at over the last few years, we have always projected to come in at a certain amount, and we've always had more money at the end, because especially when you end up with FRPs that bleed over into, late into the year, like April and May, you're not going to get a year's worth of work done in 6 months. You're just not. And so that has to be taken into account too. And I think the point was also made about, the amount of the carryover. That's something that I think everybody understands. We don't ask for taxes. You're obligated to pay taxes, but with that is a certain social contract that you expect that money to be used for maintenance of infrastructure and things like that. And I think the ways things have gone over the last few years, we've just had a backlog, and we're building up a surplus of cash, and we have no shortage of projects that need to be done. So,
Thank you.
This was a short meeting. Let me go back to the capital improvements. I think this is not sobering, but I think we need to understand how good we have it right now. That we have this, this cash balance that we're able to catch up and get things done. I think that we need to think about the we just passed the resolution for it. The tax levy, the operating expenses. If we did not renew the tax levy, it would be a significant blow to our operating expenses. We would be, I think, in really not a world of hurt, but we would definitely see lots of cuts happen if we didn't do that. If I can go back to the street slide, we don't know yet how much a 1 mil will bring us. Yet the county's going to do that math for us, but I think that shows why we should be considering the street levy being put on the ballot. We only have so much money that we can do. We're spending, I forget off the top of my head, but a little less than $1 million out of the general fund on streets. And so, we only have a limited amount of funds that we can work on streets for, and everybody knows that's something that we want to work on. And so I think, hello, Ms. Franson. Hi. I'm going to go back to this one. I just think that we need to be strategic in what capital improvements that we're planning. I've looked over the capital worksheet. I've tried to show some big expenses in there. One I know next year is like $700,000 for another elevator in the community center. Is that right?
Correct.
And then I think also if we are not able to get this used, or if we are able to get this used fire truck, in theory, our cash balance over the next 29 and 30 would be higher. Is that right?
correct. Now, Mr. Moore did catch a cell problem I have here. So as you see it now, these 2029 and 2030, because this is kind of a living and breathing document at this point. But the numbers for 2029 and 2030 will be revised down somewhat to offset that, though. I do have like payroll. There's a lot of people that are on the payroll that are extended out to 2030 that looks like they're going to work like 37 years. They're just not. So there's some of the payroll is going to end up being a little, it's I can't anticipate when somebody's going to retire, but typically they do. So the payroll is a little inflated, and I also kept everything, whatever is currently in the CBAs, just ran that all the way out to 2020, that might need to be revised. So.
Ms. Friends, and I don't want to put you on the spot. Any questions that we can kind of cover?
It's also clear to me. No, sorry, my lab went long. I had a student that I had to have extra time on their test. So, yeah, I looked over the FRP and I figure I can just watch the meeting, the parts that I missed. Is there anything major I should know of what you've talked about already?
Yeah, let me recap. If I go back several slides. So our revenue and our expenditures are not artificially inflated, but they are out of the norm for our historical context.
Right.
The reason why is in this line of the first page of page 3 of the FRP PDF, you see a new $4.4 million that was not there before. And that is, if you look at the bottom of this slide, there's money from the SORTA grant, the Hamilton County grant, the Norwood Field grant. Cannabis tax revenue is parked in that line. And then the CDBG grant or CDBG funds. And so if you look at this pink cell, this to me is very helpful as I think about where we have come and where we're going. That is what are more realistic numbers as compared to what we've known in the past.
Yeah, that makes sense. I know this year is a little off or out of the ordinary with all, in a good way, with all the money that we are getting from various grants. So yeah, as long as it's all makes sense to me. But yeah, like I said, I'll watch the meeting, and if I have any questions, I can email all y'all.
If I could ask you to go back to like the very first non-title slide. Yeah, tax budget, there you go. Maybe, I'm not sure who this question is for. What makes the difference? Like, what is in the tax budget? Let me see. What is additive to the tax budget to get to our total revenue number? Like, is it the intergovernmental charges for services, fees, licenses, permits? Like, yeah, I guess that's my question.
Like what tallies up, like what are included to get up to our tax budget?
Right. I guess I'm just trying to think about like this number relative to the other numbers, because it would almost be interesting to like see what, if you had a running historical on this, you know, like what was the 23 tax budget, 24 tax budget, et cetera. Because I'm guessing that that's like the core of the operations versus their other additive things that get us up from there, and just understanding kind of this core stream, if you will.
Might be
Mr.
a
Miracle.
great question for maybe Tim.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm not sure who it's for, but
No, if you remember the tax budget, we passed that in July. So we start working on that. I think we started working in maybe May.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of information that obviously we didn't have at that time. But we keep all the tax budgets. I have those in a folder. We'll go back as far as you want.
Okay.
I mean, we can review those if you'd like, Mr. Moore. I can kind of show you. Might even be able to put those in a spreadsheet to compare those. I could work with Sharon on that if you'd like to see that.
okay, yeah, and I think it just like fundamentally, I guess it's just like this sort of 32,162 number versus like if you go forward to slide, Jeff, this 35. I understand that there's the grant money on top of that 35 to get you to the 31,348, but just kind of that discrepancy of like the tax budget number that was like 32 and change versus this one. I'd just be curious kind of how those are calculated differently and for what goes into one and doesn't go into another.
I believe it's all the same items. I think it's just an updated number.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, we're basically telling the county this is what our intentions are to spend and revenue and expenses in there. So it's just a snapshot of in the middle of the year. It's due in the middle of July, but it kind of starts the process of getting to where we are now.
Okay. And I think Mr. Powers, that makes sense to me, that it's just sort of So I remember back in July when we did it. Yeah, in the course of 6 months, the variance ends up being, 2-3% or whatever to bring us down. So
And I would like to add, Sharon Kimbesi and I have been working in our VIP analytics. She's working on, we were looking at it actually today. Our system will calculate the tax budget. So we're hoping to compress that time and have council be able to look at that a lot sooner than we did, I think, in July. But there's some things that we're working on in analytics, I think, that we're pretty happy with, and that's one of them. Because as you know, it was quite time consuming.
Yeah. On that kind of that thread, Mr. Wagers and Mr. Powers, we have a lot of new housing coming to Norwood. And those people who live here may not work here, and maybe their tax will be withdrawn and not given to us. But there are a lot of new people moving to Norwood in theory over the next few years. I saw in the news that is it Paychex now, the old Paycor company, is potentially bringing back jobs to Norwood. PLK has talked about bringing their headquarters to Norwood. I'm not asking you to put your money where your mouth is or anything like that, but what should we be thinking about in terms of any kind of revenue growth with, new housing coming into Norwood?
Well, thank you, sir. We definitely will expect growth. So we'll expect growth. I think the Paychex, while being a relatively new development, has, a good means for potential there. And then we have, housing developments that are going up all over the city. So, Norwood's kind of always set at 2%. We've had 2% tax rate for a number of years. It's been kind of beneficial with our surrounding community being Cincinnati, with Cincinnati dropping their tax rate back at the COVID, kind of right there, mid-year 2020 is when they chose to lower that back down. So, yes, we're definitely going to see growth from the development, from the increase in population, and then, hopefully some of the businesses, we still got some office space that's open. So Paychex brings somebody back. That's just kind of icing on the cake.
Thanks, sir. Mr. Powers?
Yeah, if I could just add to that a little bit. PLK's new offices should be opening in the city by mid-year.
Okay.
So I think we would expect to see some of that impact still in 2026. That being said, there is discussion in Cincinnati about moving their income tax rate back up to 2%. So this could be a little bit of up and down.
Now might be a good time to remind people, if you aren't withholding for Norwood, or your employer's in Cincinnati or elsewhere, make sure that you're calculating that you might owe Norwood tax a little bit. I know I owed a little bit and filed my taxes this week. So. Other thoughts, comments, questions? Again, ladies and gentlemen who are not on council, anything that we should be asking or anything that we should highlight that we've not highlighted already? All right. This went a lot faster than I was planning.
Good.
All right. Anything else from council?
Yeah. All right. Cool.
what do we expect to happen next chronologically in this? Yeah.
Anybody want to field out?
Mr. Mayor?
I'll fill that one. We've been in pretty much constant contact with, our other state supervisor, Mr. Zimmerman, Mr. Powers, and many other people. She had received that on the 13th, so she had said yesterday she'd like a couple of weeks to look at it. So in my mind, Mr. Zimmer and I were talking about this. We can get that back from her next week, even Monday, March the 2nd. If there's anything that, any other questions that we could answer quickly, and have the approval of her to get that on the council agenda, we might consider a special council meeting. They're meeting on March the 6th, which is a Friday morning, the Financial Recovery Planning Commission is meeting. In our mind, we were thinking if we could get that perhaps done to council, because we've been looking at this for some time, and I think I'll say quite frankly, I think this is the best that's been offered to the state in terms of the detail and the conversation back and forth. I can't remember how many questions that we've already answered. I'm sure Mr. Zimmerman probably has a good estimate in his mind. There's several dozen questions, but if we could do maybe the 5th, council approve it, and then the 6th for FRP. Sharon Cambese's already prepared for the permanent appropriations that we would bring hopefully to council on the 10th. That's if the stars all align. Right. So that's kind of our thought process for that. I don't know if no one has anything else.
The only thing I would add to that is there is a fair amount of back and forth that we'll have to have with Lanham area and the Auditor of State. Obviously, and it's really going to depend on what she thinks of this first draft, and because she and I are already going back and forth and making tweaks. So she is going to kind of, it's going to be dependent on what her comments are. Even if we don't make the 6th, I would think there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to get it done in March for sure. As long as we can get the Auditor of State to have whatever extra meeting we would need if it doesn't get passed on the 6th.
And I would like to say too, just to follow up with what Glenn was saying, we've gotten this to her, well in advance of what historically has happened. And I think that the addition that we gave her in January is, I think that was a good jumping off point for her. Obviously asked a lot of questions, which we already answered, but what we gave her on the 13th, I don't think it was tremendous change in that. Obviously, there were some things that council had added that we've already, as you can see, we already did. And there was a little where she wanted us to, the revenue coming in and show it like we had talked about before. But I can't think that there's going to be a tremendous amount of more questions. I'm sure there will be some, but they've had it for a little while. We're pushing as hard as we can to get this done.
I think the last time she sent questions, there was about 18 pages of questions. So as long as it's less than 18 pages, I'll consider it a success. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I think you gentlemen bring up an interesting thing that I want to highlight. And as Mr. Moore pointed out, I want to be careful how I say this. So in understanding that the city is in fiscal emergency, I think we've seen that our finances are strong. We have plenty of cash on hand. We are spending, I think, responsibly. I don't know where, if I was in the administration situation, I don't know where I would spend money differently. It's all very reasonable. None of it seems extravagant or, unreasonable in any way. But I think we need to understand as citizens that the health of our city financially is solid. I think what I've seen, on the finance committee in my 2 years previous to this, and I want to highlight our personnel services situation. One of the things I think that we see here, and we've talked about on council, especially last year, was kind of making our salaries more accurate, or not maybe accurate,
Competitive, yeah.
Thank you. So that we're attracting and retaining good talent. I think you see numbers in here that reflect having those competitive salaries. I think there's also, if you dig deeper into the FRP and you look at the personnel section of it, what you'll see is that we're right-sizing some not right-sizing, but we're fully staffing some departments. And so what I would say from my experience on the finance committee is that the biggest hurdle in getting out of fiscal emergency, I think, are administrative tasks. As Mr. Zimmerman talked about, the state overseer, auditor person is very, I think, astute in making sure that we are doing the best financial practices possible. Maybe going above best practice in certain situations to require extra things of us, from what I understand. But I do want to say that I think what we're seeing in this budget is an investment in making our city services more professional than they've been in the last, I don't want to make that kind of statement, but I think that we're definitely trying to professionalize City Hall in a faster way than I've seen since I've lived here. And so I just want to kind of point that out to anybody who's paying attention to our finances, that fiscal emergency, I think, is a matter of paperwork right now, not a matter of financial health in our wallet. So, any other thoughts or comments?
Yeah, I'll just echo what you said. Not only has my understanding of the budget process and the tax budget increased every year, thanks to Mr. Miracle's great experience and just the increase in professionalization. I think it's the only thing that frustrates me about fiscal emergency is I cannot lay it at the city's feet. It's the state's structures that are frustrating me with it. So yeah, and I think that's a testament to the staffing choices and the administrative choices that have been made in the past 5-6 years.
And to piggyback off that, just to add one more thing, since I'm a politician. In my time as on the finance committee, since I've been here, Mr. Wagers, Mr. Bonzo, or Mr. Miracle, somebody from the treasurer's office and the auditor's office is at almost every finance committee meeting that we've had. I know I got some feedback whenever I was elected, before I was on council, that finance committee hadn't been meeting regularly prior to that. And so I appreciate the work of the treasurer's office and the auditor's office. If you're paying attention to our meetings, every month we're getting reports. We're getting kind of updates on what the auditor has been doing to kind of work through the report on the county measures. That's, again, the paperwork behind our fiscal emergency. So anyways, I just wanted to throw that in there since we have a little extra time.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else for the good of the order,
I can't help but I'm wired this way. Looking at last year's financial recovery plan, March 21st is the earliest that the plan has been passed in the last decade. So I'm going to set a goal for this group as best we can. March 20th or earlier for passage of this year's FRP.
Great. Yeah. From your lips to God's ears. Yeah. All right, lady, gentlemen, anything else? All right, I will call this meeting to adjournment.
Thank you.
Thank you.